Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. It is December 6th, 2023. I'm here with my co-host, PK, all the way from Tucson. So, PK, how you doing tonight?
Absolutely fabulous. It was a lovely day today. A little bit of warmth in the air. It felt so good, getting us out of our hot summer, knowing that tomorrow will probably be cold as Hades, but that's okay.
It's going to be cold in Tucson. What does that mean? It's going to be 60?
Not that cold. Everything is a little crazy these days. That's for darn sure.
Oh, goodness. Well,
Good.
You want to see cold, you know you can come here anytime, and we're already down into the 30s, so...
I'll look at the pictures. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was taking a look at some things here, and I realized that we are now in the shadow period of Mercury retrograde. And Mercury retrograde takes place December 12th to January 2nd. That's a little bit of a shadow period going into it. So anything to do with communications, electronics of any form, any kind of messages, anything to do with business, travel, anything is going to get in our way. Also pay attention. Computers, telephones, I could attest to that, and anything to do with legal documents, or be very, very cautious. Many times these things will pop up. You'll take a look at it, but don't put anything in concrete. Wait till the retrograde ends, because you're going to find that some of the things you thought were perfect aren't going to be. So if anything breaks down, put it aside, try it again when the retrograde is over. You may be surprised it starts working again. So it's an excellent time.
When does it end? When does it end, PK?
January 2nd. But
January
remember
2nd,
that the
okay.
shadow period prior to and ending.
And after,
so although it'll end on the 2nd, we've got about another 5-6 days where things sit out, shall we say. So in the meantime, don't bother returning things that you don't like. Wait till after that period of time. Then you might find what you really do want.
Okay. We know now.
And we know where we sit.
This is very helpful, yeah, especially when it comes to these retrogrades, because they do have quite an impact. Unless, as you mentioned, the person was born during a retrograde, then it doesn't affect them that way.
No, it does not. But think of it this way. Retrograde is for a short period of time. It doesn't affect them, but the rest of the year affects them. So I think I'll take the retrograde. I mean, think about it. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Not a doubt in my mind.
Okay. Well, thank you.
It's an excellent time to revamp old projects and get rid of things that you want to get finished up. It'll give you a great time to take a look at things once it's over and get that aha moment that you feel like you've really been successful at something.
Well, that's a feel-good thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can all strive for that. That sounds wonderful.
I'll keep trying.
Yes. Tonight we are going to be talking about a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts. We love Egypt. Ancient Egypt, which is still a big mystery to all of us in many ways. There are just so many things that still need to be uncovered and revealed. And tonight we are lucky enough to be honored with an author and an expert, Jose Maria Barrera. He's with us tonight, and he has the most gorgeous book. You can pre-order it on Amazon. It is called Dendera, Egyptian Temple of Time. Now, this book is stunning. I mean, we haven't seen the actual live copy yet, but we've seen the PDF, and it is absolutely gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Jose has taken all these amazing photographs of the ceiling of this ancient Egyptian temple, which is in pristine condition. So you get all the vibrant colors. It's amazing. But there's still mysteries that surround this temple, what it was used for, and what these things mean that are all over the walls and the ceilings. So Jose's here to decode this for us tonight. And again, you're not going to hear this anywhere else but right here for right now, because the book hasn't even come out yet. So you can pre-order it, but you won't be able to get a copy till like the second week in January. So you are very lucky to be listening to Jose Barrera tonight. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He's a software engineer and an application architect. He specializes in data representation and languages. And he's been fascinated by alchemy and Egyptian culture for more than 20 years. And he's also an avid photographer. His work has been exhibited in galleries in Chicago, New York City, and sold at Sotheby's auctions. Jose was born in Colombia. He holds a master's degree in computer science, and he lives in New York City. And again, the name of his new book is Dendera, Temple of Time, The Celestial Wisdom of Ancient Egypt. Jose, welcome to the show.
Patricia and PK, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I hope I will not disappoint.
I'm sure you won't.
Our pleasure to have you.
Yes, it is totally our pleasure. So tell us, how did you get so involved with Dendera? What drew you in?
Okay, so that's a long story. One of the first things is that Egypt is a mystery and has been a mystery for generations, right? And until the Napoleonic expedition showed up there at the turn of the 19th century, that was a place of legends and myths, and very few Westerners have been there. And when the Napoleonic troops and the savants that they called, they brought Napoleon, when he invaded Egypt, brought 160 academics with him to study and document basically the invasion of Egypt. And that's the beginning of what we know today as Egyptology. And when they did that, and they got on all these marvelous places and all these temples, and they saw the hieroglyphs on the walls everywhere, one of the things that they had is that they couldn't read them, because the knowledge of hieroglyphs had been lost for close to 2,000 years, and nobody knew how to read them. So you have this magnificent place, right, like all these forgotten ruins and the pyramids and all these places, and covered with messages, beautiful messages, by the way, because the aesthetics of the Egyptians were impeccable. And but it was part of the mystery is that these walls were covered with unknown symbols, so lost on time. And because of something that happened on that expedition, and is that they found the Rosetta Stone, which is basically a piece of granite that is inscribed in hieroglyphs and also in ancient Greek. And because of that, they were able to basically correlate the ancient Greek that they could read with the hieroglyphs. And that's how we started to decode and read hieroglyphs. That was Jean-François Champollion in 1820, if I'm not wrong, when we first regained the knowledge of how to read hieroglyphs. So this place has been mysterious for a long, long time. And I love mysteries. It's something that touches your curiosity and is tantalizing to go to a place like this and you're underneath this magnificent ceiling and walls and place that is obviously made by great people, and you have no idea what it is. And to me, that's unacceptable. I cannot sleep without knowing what's going on there.
That's cute.
So yeah, when mysteries is something that really attracts my curiosity, and I'm very curious. So that's the same reason why I study strange things, and language is one of those fascinating things, and ancient Egypt is deeply, deeply linguistic, right? Because of their long history on language and so on. So when I saw this ceiling on this temple, and you arrived to this temple, and I was telling you before we started here, Patricia and PK, that one of the beauties of this temple is that it's in pristine condition. It's like as if it was built yesterday, although it's more than 2,000 years old. So this temple was built. The version of the temple that we have, because in these sacred places they used to build temples and then take them down and build again on top of that and so on. So the current temple that is at Dendera, which is like 40 minutes north from Luxor, that temple was finished in the 1st century after Christ, and it was built, part of that was built by Cleopatra, which was the last pharaoh of Egypt before it fell under the ruling of the Romans. So it's fascinating because at the south wall of the temple, there is an image of Cleopatra on the walls with her son and the son of Caesarion. So it's one of the very few depictions of Cleopatra that we have, with her son, and they disappeared actually, and they were killed, right? Like in history later on, and they disappeared. So the whole history of this temple, and in general in Egypt, everything that you look at is fascinating, and you can spend a lifetime studying it. It is gorgeous. It's gorgeous, and so speaking of language, as you mentioned before, it's one of my big passions, right? It's understanding language, because it's the tool we have for understanding and for reasoning, and we are linguistic animals. So I don't know how deep do you want me to go on this? I could go on that.
Well,
here
let me ask you let me take you in a metaphysical direction, because that there are so many questions about some of the things that are on the walls, on the ceilings. I want to talk about what they call the melting steps. That's a big deal that people are still questioning. But one of the things, I know your primary focus was the ceiling, but you're also aware that on one of the walls they had a depiction of what some people are saying are 2 large light bulbs, and that they were able to basically have electricity, and that those drawings basically say that. Now, you saw them up close. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of literature about that, and that depiction of what they call the light bulbs of Dendera, right? Is not only there; they're in various places. It's more in the temple itself. Outside on one of the walls, there is another one, and you can find it in different locations in Egypt. And I think it is a case of pareidolia. I don't know if you know that word, but pareidolia is is the ability we humans have to see faces on things, right? Like so.
Oh,
so
yes.
we're pattern matching. We're pattern matching machines, basically, which is an allegory. I don't think we're machines, but is we are meant to decipher and to find patterns around, and so. And we relate and we revert everything to things that are familiar to us and that are implanted in our memory. So one of those is faces, right? We are meant to see and recognize faces, and since the moment we're born, the first thing when we open our eyes and we see is a face. So we are wired to recognize faces. So when you see I don't know, like a garbage somewhere, or people have seen like the Virgin Mary shows up on a piece of Wonder Bread on a toast, right?
Right, yeah.
We created patterns there. So when you look at what they call the light bulbs in Dendera, they resemble light bulbs, but light bulbs are a recent invention, right? And it is more like during the past, light bulbs. If I'm gonna make a light bulb, it doesn't have to look like our light bulbs. Could have a different form because all you need is vacuum inside a piece of glass, so you can have an incandescent filament inside, so it doesn't burn out and it produces light. So I think it's just they resemble this, but in reality there is a deep tradition and a deep symbology on this. And if you notice them, what they are is at the bottom, what they have is a lotus flower, which would be like the screw of the light bulb. And then coming out of the lotus flower, there is something that looks like the filament, but if you look at it, is a serpent. And that serpent, what is a snake, and what it represents is the Nile. So the lotus flower is the symbol of the beginning of the universe. So that's the birth of the Nile, and what you see around that what would be a glass on that, right, is the field that is being swamped by the waters of the Nile. So it is deeply related to the myth of creation and the flooding of the Nile, and this temple is very related to that because the whole culture was about revolve around the river. So I think that's it. I think I wouldn't read beyond that, right? Like there are other mysteries that we can explore there, but that I don't think is one of those. I think it's only
I agree with you.
a case of pareidolia.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's a light bulb as much as it may look like that to us. A couple of things that tipped me off that it wasn't, and one of them you mentioned, which is where the filament should be. It's not a filament. It is a serpent. It's a snake. And, again, all of this is deeply symbolic for ancient Egyptians. And also, the other thing was there's a djed. And that, to me, is a key for enlightenment, bringing light into the body and into the mind and into the pineal gland and all of that. So I'm fascinated by the symbol, and I wish we understood exactly what it meant, but I agree with you. I don't think it's any light bulb. Not that they couldn't have had electricity back then. They could have done anything as far as I was concerned. They were brilliant, but I don't think that image is what people are saying. I agree.
Correct. I totally agree with you. And the other thing that happens when people do this is that the real mystery, right, and is the beautiful symbology and the wisdom of these people gets hidden in this kind of interpretation, right, and is lost.
Yeah.
Because to me, the real genius of these people is not if they have like electricity or not. To me, the real genius is when you go to this temple and you see the magnificence of that place and the harmony that is within those walls, right? It tells you something very, very deep about human nature and what their culture, in their own terms, was able to achieve. So I think is way bigger and more mysterious and more sublime than Yeah, they had light bulbs. Yeah, whatever. We do.
Exactly.
It's not a big deal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we agree. That's absolutely the truth. Yes. Because they had this amazing connection that we can't even put into words today with life and death and other dimensions. I mean, they understood so much more than we can even begin to think about. So yeah, I agree. And it's so important to try to get to these deeper symbolisms and what they're really talking about. What are they really saying, like you said, about human nature, about who we are and what we're capable of? So yeah, we don't want to miss any of that. So what other mysteries did you find in Dendera?
Okay, so if you look at the history of Egypt, right, and you go and look at that place, it's an incredible place of contrast because it's the largest oasis in the world right in the middle of the desert. So the Nile, every year, there is all these sediments in Nubia, that is on the south of the mountains in Nubia, on the south of Egypt, right, where the one of the affluents of the Nile is born. There are heavy rains in Nubia, and all these very fertile soil in the water, mud, comes down the Nile, right, to the Mediterranean, and so it floods basically the banks on the sides of the river every year. It used to, until it was dammed 50, 60 years, 70 years ago. But up to that point, the people who lived around the Nile live at the mercy of the ebbs and flows of the river, because their life and their sustenance depended on the water and the fertility that the river brought. So they had two things, or the elements, who were basically the forces that determine their livelihood and their lives, right? Where the whole civilization and the whole society revolve around these forces. One of them, the sun. Obviously, you have this scorching sun, like during the whole year, right? And you have the desert that is dead, is literally dead. And when you go there, but the paradox and the beauty is that when the river recedes after the flooding, it creates the most fertile land on planet Earth. So you have this stark contrast between life and death, because you have the most fertile soil in the world and pure like dryness and nothingness on the desert. And literally, if you go there, literally you can stand with one foot on the greenest land in the world and the other one in the driest land in the world. Like you can literally step right there. So what is beautiful about this society is that they live in this incredibly harsh environment, and they were at the mercy of this very harsh environment. And yet they live in a paradise and full of blessings when the inundation was, when the flooding was correct and was right. They lived in one of the most bountiful places in the planet as well. So there is this incredible contrast between life and death, abundance and scarcity, right? Heat and darkness, because during the night the desert gets incredibly cold. So it's a place of contrast, and it's these human beings who happen to live around that place, had to deal with this extreme environment, and because of the way they lived and the way they harmonized with that environment, they managed to create the longest civilization that we have seen, and the most successful in many ways civilization that we've seen. So that's so profound and so beautiful. And once you go there and you see these temples and you see this culture and what is left of it, you understand that this is the product of that environment. All their myths, all their hieroglyphs, all their ideas, all their philosophy is about their desert and their river and their sun and everything about it. And it's beautiful. It's a poetic place. And it's so happy and so full of colors, even though these people were in the middle of this harsh environment and dead around them. You go to their places of burial, right? Like you go to all these tombs that they have, like, for example, in the Valley of the Kings, and there is not something more happy and more sublime and more beautiful than this. So even at the darkest moments, which is death, they were able to find color and beauty on those things as well. So I think it's such a wonderful place because of that, right? It's not perfect by any stretch, or it wasn't perfect, right? It was a brutal, pyramidal society, right? We were an absolute ruler who was a tyrant, and it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination because they're humans. But what they were able to achieve. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, this experience of living in light and darkness. And, yes, you're right, they did have these priests who were kind of evil in some ways sometimes, and they kept knowledge from the general population, and they kept it for themselves. But they did encode it. They encoded it in Dendera and in other places, as you mentioned. But it's still a mystery to all of us that even the people that understand hieroglyphics, I think a lot of the translation, not a lot of it, but some of it is not accurate. So even though they had the Rosetta Stone and, this pattern and this way of interpreting what these hieroglyphics are all about, I think a lot of it still remains a mystery. Mm-hmm. And there's so much. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think we. No, what I was about to say is that you're totally right. One thing is to be able to read a language, and another thing completely different is to be able to understand what the language says or what the words mean. Because first of all, these people, and in ancient is not only true for them, but in general in antiquity, people wrote in allegory and myths. So we're missing the context, the bigger context of things. So when they talk about gods, right, and all these very funny looking and strange looking, we would call monsters, right? Because you see a human with the face of a lion or a turtle or whatever it is.
Right.
They're monsters.
Yeah, an animal head.
But the funny thing about it, right, is that those are symbolic representations of attributes and other things that we lack the context, and we can find some of them pretty obvious, but in many cases when you see all these weird images that today you would attribute, these people were ignorant and they believed in animal-headed gods, right? That's not the case, actually. Those are just symbols that they use to represent deeper knowledge and deeper concepts. So the gods, who were called the Nethers in Egyptian, what they were actually the names of the gods are not nouns like our names. They were adjectives. So basically what they were is attributes or fundamental properties of existence. So once you understand that, a door opens to be able to see a lot of this, because you're looking at allegory and metaphors and in these myths, encoded in these myths, and they're not to be taken literally. Like just like what would happen to something like the Bible, right? Like the myth of creation and the fall from paradise and so on, yeah, you could take it literally and say, oh yeah, there was a talking snake and Eve had a bite from an apple and then they were expelled from paradise. Or you could see it as awakening and the fall into consciousness and into existence. So you can read those things at different levels, and I think the most basic and the most primitive way to read it is literally. And that's what we do. So when Dawkins starts ridiculing the writings in the Bible, for example, he's exactly at the same level as fundamentalist Christians, because both of them are taking the book at face value, and they're saying, one is saying, oh yeah, I believe in talking snakes, and the other one is saying, no, obviously there are no talking snakes. But both of them are talking exactly at the same level of misunderstanding, or I don't know what's the word for that, or not understanding, which is the bigger picture and the deep lessons that you can find, and the very deep wisdom encoded in these stories and in these tales and in these myths is lost when you just read them at face value, right?
Yes, that's true. It's absolutely lost. Yes, but yet, as you mentioned, this culture understood many things. And I'll tell you something that I learned a long time ago. The Egyptians knew that cancer cells died with high heat. So there's actual transcriptions of how they treated people with cancer with high heat. And here we are today. I know there was a company called Celsian, and they developed a technology that was based on phased array microwaves, and they treated tumors with high heat. And actually, the MIT scientist that was working on this, he was the one who told me that they knew this in ancient Egypt, and they treated cancer successfully thousands of years ago there. So there's an example of, there's an example of how, I know, really, who knew? So, but this guy, thank God, he knew about it, and he was able to tell me that this is not the first time that heat has been used in treating cancer. So, anyhow, it was very interesting, but it's just one of many things, because you mentioned that the whole ceiling is harmonics. And now, in this day and age, people have come forward and said that they have found that sound is healing. Sound and vibration can also heal disease. And, of course, there are the unlucky people that have been thrown in jail because they're talking about it quite loudly. However, it is true. There are ways of using sound vibration to treat disease. So, but it also has an effect on consciousness. So with this ceiling that you photographed the entire thing and put it all together, what about these harmonics you mentioned? How does that fit into this ceiling?
Okay. So the goddess of the temple is the goddess Hathor. The goddess Hathor is one of the most ancient deities in Egypt. And she was represented she had different forms. One of them was the cow. So you can see, just like the holy cows in India, it was like the counterpart in Egypt, and it was a cow. And she's the Holy Mother. She represents at the very end, what she represents is life. She is the goddess of life. And this temple is the temple of life. And she is the patron of many different aspects. One of them is music, for example. So she was a goddess of music in Egypt. And her instrument, that is the sistrum, that is like a rattle, if you go to the temple and you look at the columns that support this ceiling, that there is the ceiling of the vestibule of the temple, these columns on the top, they represent basically this instrument, the sistrum, and there are 24 columns or 24 of these instruments, gigantic, like 7-story high columns supporting this temple. So the ceiling. So these columns themselves, right, are basically the symbol of rhythm. So what you have encoded in the ceiling is the astronomical rhythms. This is an astronomical ceiling, and that's why the name of the book is The Celestial Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, is because most of the astronomical knowledge of ancient Egypt got encoded in this ceiling, and the ceiling is composed by 7 gigantic panels, and each panel represents a different frequency of existence. And so basically the temple and this ceiling is a temple, is a map of time. What it is a diagram of time. And what is interesting about time in Egypt, which is very different to our perception of time today, is that we live in a world where our conception of time is linear, right? So we go from the beginning to the end in a straight line, right? Which is, by the way, very Judeo-Christian if you think about it, right? Like there is a beginning and there is and it's just a straight line. The time for the Egyptians was cyclical. So time, every time a pharaoh died and a new one was born or was put into place, time started again. So just like we split time in before and after Christ, what they had were these pharaonic periods where there were cycles, where each of these cycles was ruled by the current pharaoh at the time. So their conception of time and the conception of the universe was cyclical, starting by the day and the night, right? And what they thought was that the sun in the morning was born, right, out of the sky, which is the goddess Nut, and then it grew during the day. And there is a beautiful depiction in the ceiling of the travel of the sun during the day. And what you see is in the morning is depicted like a little child, and then as it starts to go up and the day goes by, then it starts to mature, right? And right at the zenith at noon, the sun, the depiction of the sun is a ram with 4 heads. Like the ram is the symbol of potency, right? Is virility and is energy. And the 4 heads, what it means is right at the zenith at noon, then the sun is looking to the 4 cardinal points. So it's not that they believe that there was a ram in the sky with 4 heads, right? It's a symbol of potency and the zenith. And once you get into your head that mindset of looking at Egyptian art and symbols like that, then a door opens to you where you can start seeing and interpreting these things. And then to continue the story of the flight of the sun, the journey of the sun during the day, then in the afternoon you start to see how he's an old man, right? And then at sunset, the sun was supposed to die, and then it went to the afterlife, and he had a trip underneath the earth, they thought. And it was like during the night, the ordeal, and then it was resurrected again the morning after in the new sun. So you see, this is one of the basic cycles, or the most basic cycle, that is the cycle of the day. And so this gives you the frequency of this is 24 hours, right? Like is the day. So now you have one frequency in one of these panels. Then if you go to the other side of the ceiling, like the counter side after the central axis, there is another one where what you have is the cycles of the moon. So all of a sudden, the frequency of that is 28.5 whatever days. That is the lunar cycle. And so as you start to see from the center and the axis of the temple, as you start to walk to the sides of this room, on the ceiling, what you have is the center represents the present, right? Which is the highest frequency possible, right? Like, and as you start to move to the sides and to the sides of the room, on the ceiling, what you have is lower and lower frequencies until the room is framed by the goddess Nut, which is the immovable sky, which is eternity, where time doesn't move. So what you have here is a map of the totality of time from the present to eternity. And that's what they encoded on this ceiling, is the history of the universe in time, through cycles.
Yes, that is incredible. Now, with these harmonics and all of this encoding, I know with ancient Egypt, all of this had something to do with the human body, the brain. They were big on the brain. And I'm wondering, I mean, all of these temples, according to one of our other guests, Lon Duquette, remember Lon PK talking about this?
Yes,
were constructed so that they were so powerful that when you went into these temples actually rearranged you. I mean, they changed you. So here are all of these encodings.
This temple definitely changed me, right? Like I wouldn't be talking to you right now here. I wouldn't have written the book if this energy, like in quotes, or these harmonies that you find in this temple wouldn't attract me so much that I had to write this book, right? So of course, these things have a huge impact on your psyche.
Yeah,
Incredible.
It changed you. You said. So how did you notice it? I mean, what did you notice about yourself that was different from being in this temple?
Right.
So I'm an engineer by trade, right? I work with computers. I'm hyper rational, and as you can tell, right? Like I'm very deductive and inquisitive about things, and to me, reason and evidence are an incredibly important tool in my understanding of the world. And I'm an empiricist. I need to experience things in order to believe them. One thing that happened to me, and I've been in many sacred places around the world, like the European cathedrals, which are magnificent in other ways, but the times I've been there, they never talked to me, really. They never sang to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on this temple, when I came into this temple, and I walked underneath this ceiling, and I was in that room and the rest of the temple, I felt this warm presence, this psychological thing, so cozy, so beautiful, so interesting. It's the only place where I have been in the presence of the divine, has been this place.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that's and is I what I told you, I'm an empiricist, right? I need to experience things. That was my experience at the temple, like the first time I went in, and the reason why, and this book at the end is a tribute to the goddess Hathor and that temple, because I want more people to experience that. But it's a tribute to that, right? And all this work was a tribute to that goddess, basically, at the end.
Gosh, how remarkable that you were able to have that experience. And again, with Hathor being a goddess energy, so it would be more of the feminine principle, which would be nurturing and warm and enveloping.
And terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
And horrifying. And Hathor, so Hathor has those two two aspects, right? So on one side, she's nurturing and is the protectress and vitality and renewal and all that. But the other side is she's a violent goddess. And one of her stories is that at some point she went to Earth and she started like killing people, and she massacred so many people that the other gods were fearful that she would like end with mankind. And so the goddess, led by the god Thoth, went and made her drunk with beer, and she fell asleep. And that was the only way to appease her, was by giving her beer. And that's why she's the goddess of drunkenness as well, and beer. But it's because she almost exterminated the mankind. So
well, wasn't the story that she was after the dark forces, that there was a force of chaos, and that she was there to basically get it under control? And so I wouldn't want to make her mad.
No,
definitely. I have. So she's very loving, and but I wouldn't want to deal a lot of respect you have to have for her. It's very powerful.
Definitely, you got to be on her good side all the time.
Oh.
Yes.
Like, have you ever seen a mother protecting her children? It's like, you don't mess with that.
That's right. Yes,
and
I have a lot of respect for that.
That's what she represents. That's what she is. That force, the maternal force, the protection. She's a cow, right? Like she's the goddess of the Milky Way, of milk, right? Like nurturing, of birth. So that's she's the great mother, basically.
Yes. It's just it's an amazing experience that you've had with all of this. And tell us about these, what they call the melting steps. What is that? I saw pictures of it. It looked like they were kind of melted down the center. What was that about?
Correct. So what is interesting about the temple, and so I can tell you a little bit about this, and is basically you walk on there is this staircase that goes to the second floor of the temple, to the ceiling actually, and I can tell you a little bit about the anatomy of the temple, because at the end, this is the temple of life. You know what the temple is? A womb. So the sanctum, these temples, the sanctum sanctorum, that is the inner chamber, the holy of holies, right? Is the whole thing is a womb, and what they had was all this ritual where they used to take the statue of the goddess to the ceiling, and they have these two staircases on both sides. But if you look at it, it's like the temple, in a way, is an allegory to the reproductive system of the female. And as you go upstairs, right, and they took the statue that is in the center of the temple, and they take it to the terrace of the temple, to be united with the sun, with the rays of the sun, to conceive a child. So the whole temple is an allegory of the act of the creation of life, of the miracle of life conception.
Oh my, okay.
Which makes perfect sense, right? Because she is the goddess of life. She's the Holy Mother. So
what are these melting steps? These melting steps are representative of what?
So as I would think those staircases are the fallopian tubes, but that's my speculation. But when you are there and you look at this, it's the transit of the ovi, right? Like going up, like descending, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. Now, one of these staircases, it happens to be that when you look at the steps, they look as if they were melted, like literally, and there is no explanation for it. Nobody knows what happened. It doesn't look like like you go to a lot of like medieval churches and all this, and you look at the staircases, and they are basically eroded by people walking up, but the erosion of those staircases is different than this. This looks like clearly like as if it was melted. Could be something else, I don't know. But yeah, it looks like, and they call them the melted steps because they look as if they have been melted. Yeah.
Yes, they did. They did, at least in the photos. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. And also, again, with looking at Hathor as the goddess, looking at the feminine principle, there were always doorways with women to other realities. And that, did you see that anywhere? Any depictions of that in the ceilings or in any of the...
So literally, like if you think about it, right, the conception of life is you are out of nothing bringing consciousness into this realm. So if that's not a portal, if the womb is not a portal, I don't know what it is, right? Because because it is literally you are bringing consciousness into this universe through that doorway. So that's fascinating. And now these temples have what is called false doorways, and many of them, where what you see is there is a wall, and you walk to the wall, and there is this door, like suggested, or there is a door on the wall, but there is no wall. It's just like you see a frame of the wall, but it's a wall. And so they're like these portals to nowhere, like these doors to nowhere, because they're just doors, right? Now, what is interesting about this temple, because it's the temple of conception, because of the goddess, is that at the back of the temple, what you have is the goddess Hathor having birth. And you can see the image of the goddess squatting, because that's the way Egyptians had birth, was like squatting. And she's squatting and having a baby in a squatting position right at the back of the temple.
Wow. Gosh. Now, when you took all these photographs, how many trips to Egypt did you have to make to get all of that?
So all the photos, I did it in one trip. And it took me 3 days, 8 hours every day on this room. And I took 5,000 photos of the ceiling during those 3 days. You cannot imagine the pain in my neck after those 3 days.
Oh, no.
Because I was just like moving my tripod around this room and taking photos with my tele. And yeah, I took 5,000 photos there.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was looking upwards for 3 days, 8 hours straight every day. Like I was there at the moment that they opened the temple, and they kicked me out of the temple basically when they closed it every afternoon for 3 days. So I spent 24 hours taking photos, like literally 24 hours taking photos, basically. There are 5,000 photos in 24 hours.
Oh my God!
And it was a methodical thing where
amazing.
Basically, I tessellated the ceiling. I divided it into little squares, and then I was just moving like in a pattern around the temple with the camera and on a tripod, and taking photos and taking photos and taking photos. And then at the end, that was the biggest pain was not the pain in the neck, but the biggest pain was when I came back with the 5,000 photos. And I have to stitch them together to recreate the whole ceiling in high resolution.
Oh my gosh! What a project!
That was like 3 months of work. Yeah, like working on the images, and if you think about it, because I spend 8 hours every day, then the light conditions change because the sun is moving from the morning to the afternoon. So the lighting of the ceiling changes as the day goes along, right? Because the light that is reflected and enters into the temple changes. So all the photos have a different lighting, kind of. So I have to correct for that, and I had to write, because I'm a computer nerd. I wrote software to correct and align all these, so the images look equally illuminated, all of them, so I could stitch them together. So that was a lot of math went into trying to compensate for the movement of the sun on the photos.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Now, do you feel, I mean, obviously you feel a very close connection to this. Do you ever get any dreams or any other visions that really bring you back to that place where you may have lived before?
That I've been there before I was in this incarnation? Is that
Yes.
the question?
Yes.
No, never. No. I had many dreams of this place because and I guess in order to write a book like this, you have to be obsessive, and I'm super obsessive about things.
Yeah.
So I've been obsessed with this place for a long time, and while I was writing the book, I dreamt with the book, I dreamt with the goddess, I dreamt with the temple many times, thinking of trying to make sense of what the ceiling was actually, and I spent I amassed for this project at the end. I have a library, probably 300 books on ancient Egypt, and the funny thing is that there is no literature in English about this temple. There is very, very, very few things written in English, and the person who actually did the translations of the ceiling her name is Sylvie Coville, and Sylvie Coville is a French Egyptologist who spent 30 years in this temple, talking about obsessions, translating and decoding every single symbol in this temple. So she's probably the person that knows the most about this temple in the world, right? Has known since the Egyptians, because she spent 30 years there. But her books are impenetrable. They're academic books, and all the literature of this temple is either written in French or in German. So when you try to go and try to see what it was, so when you go there and when you try to see what is written about this temple, and you're trying to figure out what this means, it's like nothing, right? So I had to get her books, which by the way cost an arm and a leg. All these academic books, they're like $400 or $500 a piece.
Oh my gosh!
So it's information that is truly hidden from people, right? At many levels. One is the price of the books. Second is the audience that these books are written to. Is they're academic, so they're for Egyptologists. So in reality, this book is truly the first book in English that talks about this ceiling in depth. And I'm standing in the shoulders of giants, like this woman, right?
Yes.
She the amount of love that she had for this place is incredible.
And you too. I mean, this is a remarkable achievement, and you're giving this as a gift to all of us. And I wouldn't be surprised if when we each get a copy of this incredible book, that as we are drawn into the photographs and the pages that you constructed for us, that we feel the same energy that you felt when you were there. Because I know you put everything into this. So this is just beyond a book. There is so much more to what you created here. And gosh, thank you so much, Jose. This is just amazing.
Thank you. And it's a labor of love. It really is, right? And it's very humbling in a way, because this is not my field of expertise, right? If you want to talk about computer languages, we can do that, and I can do it. But this is something that I had. This, like Egypt and the knowledge of this, is something that I had to start from nothing. So, because I didn't know anything about this place, so it's very humbling, right? And to write something, on an unknown field to you, and especially such a complex field like is Egyptology and this history that, as you mentioned, we know very few things about it. So, but at the same time, it's very rewarding, right? And finding things that I know very few people in the world have seen, because very few people, when you go there to this temple and you look at the ceiling and it's 7 stories high, 110 degrees in the shade, and people are rushed by their tours and all this, so they have like 10 minutes to look at this ceiling, which is dark. So the idea is you can have a telescope, which is basically a lens of my camera, and I was able to recreate the ceiling and look in detail, like every star in the ceiling and every little figure in the ceiling and every crack and everything in the ceiling. Then you realize that you see things that very few people have seen before. And it's very humbling and it's very exciting as well, because it's, oh my God, I'm seeing things that, and I'm seeing things that nobody has seen, and that's a fascinating, very interesting feeling actually.
It is.
And
oh my goodness. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine the feelings that you had when you were standing inside that temple and doing all this photography and then piecing it together. I mean, it is an incredible accomplishment and a gift,
Yep.
a true gift to everybody. So, goodness me. Well, I am going to, I mentioned, we were talking about this off the air, and I just want to mention to everybody what we were discussing was a video I saw where somebody was addressing some things on the wall at Dendera. And they described them as 2 stargates. They were small, but there were some harmonics written right above them. I'm very interested to know more about that. So I'm going to send this to you, Jose, and we would love your opinion on what you think this is. So, or if it's possible, if it's possible to get in a translation of what they did right above these, what she called gateways. Who knows? I mean, it might not be, but it's possible. And if that's possible, I'd love to know more about it. And I know, PK, you're dying to know too. So,
most definitely,
right.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I love about doing interviews is that a lot of ideas, like I think knowledge is something that is shared, and when you are sharing with other people, and you're like basically when you have the meeting of minds is when ideas spark and show up, right? So
yes.
This thing that I was telling you, I think is very, very interesting, and I haven't thought about it until I started talking to you guys. And it's this idea that the ultimate stargate, right, is the female's womb. That's the portal to enter this universe, and that's fascinating. You guys have a portal inside. That's incredible.
It is. Don't we feel important now?
Definitely.
Well, everybody, the name of this very important, very beautiful, very transformative book is called Dendera Temple of Time, The Celestial Wisdom of Ancient Egypt. It is written by Jose Barrera, and we are so grateful, Jose, to have spent this time with you tonight. So enlightening and so exciting to be a part of this. Thank you.
No, it's been my honor, and I hope I didn't disappoint.
Not at all.
Pleasure.
No.
Our pleasure.
Yes, this is just great. Just great.
Sure, thrilled.
And please,
thank you
we'll
so much
stay
for
in
having
touch.
me.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
we'll
absolutely.
stay in touch, and as you have more information, once you get these academic books and you start going through them, and if you find anything else that you want to come back on the show and share with all of us, we'd love it. So
Definitely.
Please keep in touch.
I could bore you to death with this. It's my passion, so don't say that because I
it's not
your
boring
word for
to
it.
us. No, it is. Believe me, we find it just as exciting as you do.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, you take care, and we will be talking. So everybody, we'll be back next week with another great show. And until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.
The State University of New York is your opportunity to live your college dream. With low tuition and plenty of support to set you up for career success, at one of SUNY's 64 colleges and universities, you can find yourself living and learning in a vibrant and supportive campus community. Find yourself graduating with little or no student debt thanks to SUNY's low tuition, financial aid, and scholarships. Find yourself at SUNY. Visit suny.edu/nycgo. That's suny.edu/nycgo.
At Arizona State University, we offer a wide variety of degree programs online to match all kinds of interests and career aspirations. Programs that are taught by the same notable faculty who teach on campus and designed using innovative technology to improve learning outcomes and equip you for post-graduation success. That's why 87% of ASU online graduates indicated they were promoted at work or received an increase in salary after earning their degree. Find your program at asuonline.asu.edu.